All right, so once again, I started talking before I started taping, but since there's a couple of you not here right now, today is Tuesday the 16th. All right, so far we went over the hands-on test that you guys took, and then I gave back the written tests for chapters 1 and 2. We went over them. Now we're going over chapter 3. All right, which starts on page 101 in the book. We will do that, and then we'll see where we are time-wise. Tomorrow we will go over chapter 4. Afterwards, we're going to go over, and using that payroll program as an example, we're going to make some changes to it, all right, and do some validation and stuff on it. Thursday, when you come in, you will take the written test for chapter 3. Rest of the period will be lab. Friday, you'll take the written test for chapter 4. Rest of the period will be lab. Next Monday, the 22nd, you'll take your hands-on test for chapters 3 and 4. I'll try to make sure I've got the test written by Friday so I can give you at least some kind of an idea what to look for. All right, so chapter 3, good, bad, or indifferent, you've got a lot of the stuff already. We already created a form. You know where the toolbox is. You know how to add labels. You know how to add text boxes. You know the naming conventions for forms and controls. You know how to correct errors. And then they talk about which interface to use. All right, the interface basically, you know, I think I've said this to you before, if not in here in other classes, but I want you to be familiar with certain terms. And that is, as an example, if I bring this up, all right, that's just a Windows calculator. That's an interface right there. That's what I see. But if I type in a number, 897, and I hit square root, all right, there is something that is built into that calculator that makes it do the square root. Does that make sense to everybody? That's what's referred to as the implementation. When you write code, you let other people see your interface. You typically don't let them see your implementation. All right? I just wanted you to hear the verbiage, so to speak. In chapter 1, everything we did was console. Now we come in and we start talking Windows Forms application. So they talk about a lot of this stuff. We've mentioned it before. You've seen this. We chose Windows Form application. You said where you wanted to save it, etc. All right? Nothing really new right there, okay? The stuff that's here, you don't ever have to memorize this. You don't have to memorize it. But you should be familiar with where it says File, Edit, View, Project, Build, etc. That's your menu bar. This section that's in here is called your Solution Explorer. The section underneath it is called the Properties window. This right here is literally referred to as the Form Designer. That confuses people sometimes because when you see this, so if I come through here and I start up a brand new project, so I come in and I do a File, New, Project, and it's going to be a Windows Form. I'm just going to call it junk because that's all it is. But if I come through here and do this, okay, what I want you to realize is this file right here, this is referred to as the Form Designer. That said, notice if I open this, there is a file called form1.designer.cs. Don't ever jack with that file. When you go in and you add things, so when you go in here and you go down and you bring up your toolbox, all right, and you start to add stuff. So I come in here and I just put a button out there. First of all, before I even do anything, what's in this file now? Junk. This is all system stuff that's in here right now. I don't know what it is. I don't ever jack with it. But if I come through here now and I come back here and I throw a button out there and I go back to this file again, all right, sooner or later it puts some code in there so it's able to handle all of my stuff that I put into my form. I will just tell you, if you decide you're going to start playing with the stuff that's in here, it's a real good way to make your project not work because it's a system file. So again, I made a short story long, but I just want you to know, oops, cancel. I just want you to realize that when we do this, this literally, this thing is referred to as your Form Designer, but it's not the form1designer.cs file. And you should also not touch this resx thing. All right, people always say, well, what is that stuff? I don't know, because when there's stuff I'm already told and I know I shouldn't touch, I don't touch it, so I don't know what it is. All right? All right, so we talked basically about everything that's in here. These are the files that are in your Solution Explorer. The only one you should ever have to jack with for now in here is the form1.cs file. A little bit later, we'll use the one underneath it too, the program.cs file. But you should never have to touch the properties, the references, or that app.config. You shouldn't have to touch any of those ever for any reason. All right. The properties window that's down here, I think you already know this. If you look up on the screen, you'll notice that if I click on the form and I look over here, I get a bunch of properties, what? For the form. That's all the stuff I can change for the form. For instance, this is just a garbage form. Hit enter. There it is. I can change the name. So instead of calling, the form, instead of calling it Form 1, I can call it Form Garbage. Stupid name, but you get the idea. Then once I go over and click on button, now my properties window changes. These are the properties just for a button. All right, so again, if this was button calculate, for example, that's its name in code because that's the name. If I come down here, that's its name right there. Once I double click that, it opens up the code window. So double clicking on a control brings up what's referred to as the default event for that control. So the default event for a button is the click event, which should make sense to you. That's typically what you're going to do with a button, is click it. All right, they talk about this, and again, this is stuff I want you to see. So please, everybody, look up on the screen here. You'll notice that down here, if I go back to here, okay, I've got a bunch of buttons right here. Maybe you've seen them before, maybe you've tried them before. I go right here, and it rearranges my stuff into categories. All right? If I go over to here, it gives me an alphabetic listing. Okay, except the name is at the top. If I go over here, it pretty much is the same thing. But the key one is this, right here. The thing that looks like a lightning bolt. When you click there, that is all the different, those are all of the different routines that a button can have. All right, so let's say that I did this. I said, ooh, back color change. That's kind of a cool one. And I click that. Now notice I've got button, calculate, back color changed. But I don't want to put any code there. In other words, I don't want that to be there. Some of you did this. You had a bunch of stuff open like this. I don't want this here anymore. You don't just highlight it and hit delete. You don't do it that way. What you do is you come back to here, and I said, oh, I don't want this thing, this back color. So you highlight all of it, and you hit delete, and now notice it's gone. Did I do that too fast, or did that make sense? That make sense? So if you accidentally open up a property, an event for a control and you don't want it, go into design mode, go to your lightning bolt, find where it is, highlight it, and just hit delete. All right? If you want to go back again then to your properties, you just click the button that's got the A to Z, and boom, it's back. Sometimes you got to click it twice for whatever reason. There we go. All right, you click there. All right. This area that's down here is called your output window. It doesn't always show, but notice as soon as I come in here, I'm going to purposely put a mistake in here. And I'm going to say int age equal 10. And I'm purposely going to leave no semicolon on there. I'm doing it like that on purpose. All right. then what you'll notice when you start to look, come on, open up, is that'll be in my output window. So when I go and I try to run this, it says there were errors. Virtually 100% of the time when you get this, it says, would you like to continue? Just click no. Virtually 100% of the time. And then it'll show you your error. And it says that's a warning because you get the, if you look over here, you'll notice it's the little yellow yield sign or whatever that is. All right, that's just a warning, but this is the error. So if I double click on it, the system always tries to take me as close as it possibly can to where that error is in question. All right, and you'll notice it'll run now because there's just a warning. Now, one of the questions that's on your next test is this. It says the form class has approximately how many properties? The answer is 100. I know that's in there. I think they say like 10, 100, 1,000, and 50 or something like that. But the answer is 100. All right. Is that important? Not at all. I don't know why she put that in there as a question, but she did. Here are some different things that you can do with a form. You already know what the accept button is. All right. If you set that to a button, that means when you hit enter, boom, it does this. It does the reaction. It does that click event. You know what cancel button is. If you hit the escape key, it runs that click event. You know what back color is because we've already changed the back color. We've even changed the fore color already. So that's the color of your background. That's the color of your text. You should always set the name, and I don't think I did that when I went over the test with you, but I should have given that form a better name. The size gets or sets the size of the form. You may or may not have seen that before, but if I come over to here and I go over here, you'll notice when we look, if I look under size, it says size 75 by 23. That's the size of the button. If I go over to here, it says 300 by 300. Notice if I make it bigger, how that changes. That's the size property. Most every property, in fact, virtually every property that I can think of that you set here, you can set it in code too. Doesn't always work the other way. There are some properties you don't see here that you can only set in code. All right. Questions on any of this? All right. The text we've already looked at. The visible gets or sets the value indicating whether or not a form is visible. So if you want a form to be invisible at the beginning, you set the visible to false. Does that make sense? It's one of those Boolean properties. They go into a big thing here. I'm not going to read this to you. You should hopefully by now know the difference between the form's name, which is the name you use if you are writing code, and the form's text. All right? The text for the form is that stuff that's way up on the top. The text for a button is what shows on the button's face, etc. So you should be able to understand that kind of stuff. All right, using the toolbox to add a button to the form. What we have looked at so far and what I said to you is virtually what we use in here almost the whole semester is this. The stuff under all Windows forms. But notice there's the thing that says common controls. All right. I think those are just the ones you'll use most often. All right. But they're a subset of these all Windows forms. Then we've got containers, and we'll look at group box and we'll look at panel a little later. All right. Menus, I already showed you. We grabbed that menu strip and put it up there, so you've looked at that a little bit already. Data is if you're using databases. We're not going to do any database work with this until right at the end of the semester. Components. All right. I've never done any work with components themselves on here, so I'm not sure exactly what they are. Again, I think they're a subset of all Windows forms. Printing. If you want to send stuff to the printer, do a print dialog box, etc. Different dialog boxes that you can set. WPF is Windows, I can't remember what the P is, something Windows Forms. All right, we won't do anything with that. And the general, I don't think, has anything in it. So we're going to use all Windows forms if you want to get to something. All right, that's what I use at least. All right. So they show you that push pin right over here to make sure that your toolbox stays on the screen. We've talked about that already. All right. They have you drag a button out there and then look at the properties and stuff. And they say, here's some of the properties for a button. You'll notice that most of them are the exact same name or the exact same properties that we just looked at for forms. One that's different is this one. That's the enabled property. If you set enabled to false, then what's going to happen when you run the program is the text on the button is going to look gray, and if you click on it, nothing's going to happen. You've disabled the click event, all right, by doing that. You don't normally do that, but there may be a reason for doing it. You double click on the button or whatever the control is to bring up the code window for it, okay? What this means, and I think I went over it at the beginning of the semester, but I'll say it again anyway. Object is who clicked it. Typically that's you, you're the sender. Event args, the only thing you typically use event args with are things like if you're working with a mouse, because that'll give you your X and Y coordinates. All right, so we won't have to worry about that anymore. The static void main, it says there GUI does contain a main method. I think I said this to you already. On the off chance I did not. All right, if I go into this program CS file that's right here and I double click on it, notice what's there if I go down enough. Static void main. The same static void main that you had in our console app, but this one has got different stuff in it. It's telling it basically to allow it to run the application. These are things that are filled in for you automatically. Again, you should never have a reason that I can think of to jack with those. All right. So they go through there and they explain all the intricacies of the button click. All right. They say access specifier and they say it's private. When you say something is private like that, all right, when you say it's private, that means it can only be called from this form. If I go in and add another form, and I can do that, I can just right mouse click on the name of my project, which is junk, choose add, go to new item, and somewhere in here there's Windows form, and click add. Now I got another form. But this form does not know about anything that's in this form that's private. If I go to this new form and I add something in it that's private, then this form doesn't know anything about it. If I want to be able to share stuff between those two, I can make them public. All right, we're going to go over that in a lot more depth and breadth of coverage as we go on in here. All right. If you want to know what static means and what events are, etc., I've talked about a lot of this stuff. You can read that. A label, again, typically is used, so you've got a heading, and table or labels very often go with text boxes. So they have you add a label here, and then they have you add a text box after the label. Okay? This is much simpler. This is much more simplistic, I guess, than what we did when we went through the examples in class. So, am I right in assuming, taking a look at this, anybody who's in this room could build this interface? Is that fair? Yes? All right, I'm looking for 6 heads to go north and south. All right, I see about 4 or 5. Okay, good. All right. This is, I think this is a button that says click to add. So you put in here like 10, you put in here 12, you click to add, and then this label here will say 22. That makes sense? All right. And they even, I think, show you the code to do that. There it is. So they're creating 3 variables here, Then they're saying that first variable is whatever was in that first text box converted to an integer. That second variable is whatever was in that second text box converted to an integer. The sum is the addition of those two. And then you want to go to that label and set that equal to sum. Now notice they don't use the toString, but it's a good idea to do that anyway. All right? All right. So there's an example. Focus, we all know what focus is because we've done that before. Remember in your clear routine, you cleared out those 5 or 6 text boxes, and then you set the focus to the first text box. It's just where the mouse currently is. That's all focus is. Tab order you know about, we did the view tab order. All right? Again, unless somebody stops me and says, what do you mean by that? I'm just going to keep going. I already showed you today how to change the labels font. In fact, we changed the labels font and we changed the text boxes font. Okay? The way you name those, again, typically you'll do it either like this, where you say text box at the end, or you'll say the text box first. I don't really care very much. I don't care much about which way you do that, but you should be consistent with the way you do it. All right? This, if you've never heard this term before, this is code refactoring. Please look up on the screen. If I come in here and I decide I want to, for whatever reason, I don't want to call this calculate. Let's say that was supposed to be my clear button. Okay? So I come over here and I right mouse click on it and I come over to here and I change the name. Okay? I can change that to button clear. But there's a problem doing that. I hit enter. All right, I double click. What's there? My button calculate. See that? So what I should have done before I did that, all right, I'm going to remove that line of code. I don't need it anyway. But what I should have done before I did that was I should have come in here before I changed the name or did anything. I should have come over to here, found that click routine, gotten rid of it, then come over here and change the name. Does that make sense? All right. There are certain things that you can do too with refactoring. And when you refactor something, it's another way. Come on, get on. I want to get that out of here. It's another way to rename things. All right. And they go through that with you here. I'm not going to worry about it right now. I just want that box to go away, and for whatever reason, it's not. I used to have a different package. VitalSource bought the company that used to do all this, and I never had a problem with it. It went to VitalSource, and it screws up a lot now. You can see what's happening. So what's going to happen here is I've got to close it. Even that'll take a minute. Got to go back to my bookshelf and tell it to open it again, which is just a pain in the butt, but whatever. All right. Correcting errors. This is what I said to you before. Clicking yes will run a version that worked. You don't want to do that because it doesn't have your latest and greatest. So you'll say no when that comes up. Right. We already looked at the errors. If that box isn't showing, you should be able to say view error list. So again, if I'm in here and it's not showing that box down here, I should be able to say view and find error list, and there it is. Okay, and you might say it's the way it looked before. Yeah, but before it didn't have the focus on it. Notice now there are no errors in here. Even if I close it, I believe I can still do a view error list and bring it back again. All right, so if you accidentally remove it and you want it back, that's how you do it. You can add line numbers. We talked about that already, so I'm not going to go through that. Deleting an unwanted method. I already showed you that. All right. Visual Studio Help, you may or may not be aware of this. If you'd all look up on the screen here, let's say that, you know what, I want to do something with a darn button and I don't remember how. If you highlight the button and you hit your F1 function key, it brings in the built-in Visual Studio Help. Notice what it does it for, the button class. It always does it based on whatever your current control is. Now, notice what it is it's just said it went out to msdn.com for me. So I can find that same information like I showed you before by going out to MSDN, which is Microsoft Developer Network.com. All right? Okay. Next, they talk about deciding which interface to use. All right? And they mention here that GUIs typically look snazzier. All right, it's easier to add colors and fonts to them. All right, consoles you can build quicker. They're smaller. Sometimes if you want to do something simplistic, they're easier to use. In short, the author says it doesn't matter because the logic that goes inside is the same for both. All right? So they have you do basically a kind of a hello world at the end here. You want to build that, you can. That's, you know, you don't have to turn it in or anything, but all right. So let's look at the review questions that are at the end of the chapter here. I cheated and did them ahead of time. So we're on page 131. The first one, which of the following is a GUI object that provides an interface for collecting, displaying, and delivering information? The answer is, and that contains other controls. When I first did this, I put down C. No, it's A. Because the form is a control that contains other controls. So the actual answer is A. Number 2, where does menu bar lie? The answer is C, horizontally across the top of the window. Number 3, in the IDE, the area where you construct the form is called D, the form designer. Number 4, when you create a new form, by default, its name is B Form 1. Number 5, the form class has C, about 100 properties. Number 6, which of the following is not a form property? The answer is B, project name. Anybody need any of those first 6 repeated? Number 7, which of the following is a legal form name? It's B. A is illegal because there's a blank space here. Number 9, which of the following is legal for the form's text property? All right. For the text, it's either of the above. So the answer is C. Number 11, which does not appear in the IDE's tool list? The answer is A, text. Number 10, after you drag the button onto the form, you can double click it to C, create a method that executes when the user clicks the button. Number 11, the button click method that is generated by the IDE. The answer is A, all of the above. Number 12, an A event is generated when the user interacts with a GUI object. 13, if you create a button named Yes Button, the name of the method that corresponds to it is D, Yes Button underscore click. 14, statements allowed in a click method include C, both of the above. Number 15, text boxes are controls with which the user can input data. 16, the value in a text box is a string C. 17, which of the following is a legal and conventional name for a text box? The answer is B, salary text box. A is illegal because there's a blank space here between the Y and the T. All right. 18, the process of changing the internal structure without changing the way the program works, typically involving renaming, is C, code refactoring. Number 19, if you inadvertently create a click button, etc., etc., the answer is A. You eliminate the method. The answer is B. You eliminate the method from the event list in the properties window. So 19 is B. Number 20, of the following, the most significant difference between many console applications and GUI applications is A, their appearance. All right. Everybody have all those?
I think it's 7 and 8.
Yes. Seven is B, because I think there's a blank space between the word payroll and form and A in A. And number 8 is C, either of the above.
Thank you.
Any other questions? You may or may not remember, but quite a while back when I sent you an email, I emailed you the test review for Chapter 3. Can you see if you can find that right now, please? Everybody find it? Because I'd like to go over that with you right now. All right? Number 1, is it more practical to virtually always use an IDE? Now again, not everybody agrees with that statement. Typically, yes, because much of the code will be written for you, and most of us are people who like to see pictures. Number 2, does changing a form's name affect the program's design? No. Can a form be relocated, or can a control be relocated on a form? Yes. Must you create a click event for a button? No. But if you don't create a click event for it, it's typically not going to do very much. So number 2, the answers are no, yes, and no. Number 3, true or false, you should retain the default names for forms and controls. You should not retain the default names. That's true. You should. The keyword there is should not. Again, these are taken right from the test. Okay, so that's probably going to be a true-false question. So number 1 is yes, because much of the code is written for you. Number 2 is no for the first part, yes for the second part, no for the third part. Number 3 is true. Number 4, the environment that the user sees is also known as the program interface. Number 5, what are form controls? They're things like labels, etc., that you put on a screen to interact with the program. All right? So again, a label is a form control, a text box is a form control, a button is a form control. All right? What is the default name for a form? Form 1. Form controls consist of form controls? I don't think so. Controls really consist of properties. All right? The form class itself has 30 properties. The text property is the text that shows at the top of the screen. Everybody have all that? Yes? Number 6, the menu bar. It's in the IDE main window. It goes horizontally across the top. It contains file, open, close, and a bunch of other stuff. All right? What is the Solution Explorer? It's up in the upper right-hand corner. All right? And it's used for viewing and managing project files and settings. Everybody have 5 so I can scroll up? Number 7, form property names generally appear in alphabetic order. A notable exception is the name property, because the name property appears at the top. You've already seen that. All right. Go back real quick so that you can catch up here, Evan. Number 1 was yes, because it writes much of the code for you. Number 2 was no, yes, no. Number 3 was true. Number 4 was interface. Number 5 is pretty darn long. There was 6, and there is 7. 8, if you drag a button's handles, it changes the size. That's those little white circles. You've done it already. Leave that up there for a minute. Do you have any problems with the test?
No.
Okay. Number 10, a control used to display text is called a label. Number 11, the property used to display a string of characters in a label is the text property. So 10 is label, 11 is text. Controls that you can use to enter data are known as text boxes. 13, the text property of a text box is used to hold the value the user inputs. Everybody all caught up? Yes? 14, the tab order is the order in which controls receive the focus. So as you tab your way around. 15, code refactoring is the process of changing a program's internal structure without changing how it works. (16) If you make a change to a program and rerun it, you get an error message that says could not copy. Probably you still have the program running. So you close the previous program execution. It means stop the current run that's happening. Questions on any of those first 16? All right. 17. A major difference between GUIs and consoles is the GUI has a more snazzy interface. This is her words, not mine. All right. 18, the list of controls that you can drag onto a form so you can develop programs visually is the Toolbox tab. 19, what does the button's visible property do? As it says, it indicates whether or not the button will be visible when you run the program. Number 20, as it says there, after you have dragged the button onto a form, you can double click it to create a menu that executes when the user clicks the button. 17 is a GUI, has a more snazzy interface. 18 is the Toolbox tab. 19 is what happens with the button there. 20 is double click. 21, what is runtime? Runtime, as they say right there, it's the period during which you execute the program. This is not on the test, but you are always in one of three modes. If you're keying stuff in, if I'm going out and I'm putting different controls onto the screen, if I do that, I'm in design time. If I click the button to run my program, I'm in runtime. If I make an error where the program blows up, I'm in debug time. Typically, rather than run time, it's design mode, run mode, and debug mode. Those are the three modes that you can be in. All right, here's the definitions then. Let me put these on a new page. Cut down the size so I can put all 9 or, and how many there are? Yep. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Hopefully that's big enough where you can read that. Okay, and I'll leave that up there for a couple minutes. Once you're done, let's take another break, and we're going to start up again at 10:15. Everybody hear that? We're going to start up at 10:15. Evan, my hope is at that time you can take the written. Okay. When you come back, I'm going to give you your test back, the hands-on test back. So again, put in those definitions, take a break, come back by 10:15, please. So one more time when you're done, be a short break, but please take a break afterward. What I forgot to tell you is for Chapter 3, I want you to do number 1, so please circle it or however you delineate it in your book. I want you to do number 1, which is that same miles to kilometers, but a GUI one. So number 1. Number 2, the projected raises, GUI. Number 4, the eggs interactive GUI. And number 6, and you should be able to do this one real quick because it's another payroll one. So 1, 2, 4, and 6. Everybody hear that? 1, 2, 4, 6, and as you have been doing, the debug exercises. All right. Now I'm going to give back this test, and